Welcome. Welcome. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Julianne Heafey, and I'm a senior consultant with mbaMission. And we're broadcasting live today about what HBS wants in its application essay. We're going to spend about an hour together today, and I have a presentation that I'm going to go through, and we'll leave time for some questions at the end. So let's dive in so we get to as much information as possible. Okay, great. So let's get started and thinking about the HBS application essay. We're going to take you through a few points. Mostly these top 3 points are first, to give you the perspective of an admissions officer. Second, how you go about creating an HBS essay strategically, and then like how you write the actual application. So starting off from the mind of the HBS admissions officer, I think the first thing to keep in mind is, what are they dealing with as they look at this huge pile of applications? They have limited spots. Not everybody, obviously, who is qualified can get in. And so as you think about your own candidacy, take a second to think, put yourself in their shoes, okay? They've got almost 10,000 applications, possibly higher this year, for around 930 spots in a normal class. And remember that they have this 2+2 deferred enrollment program where they admit college seniors. And so there's a backlog of those who are already, sort of assigned to the class. So already 100 seats of those 930-ish seats are occupied. So you are in the process of trying to get one of the remaining spots. And the acceptance rate historically the last few years has been around 11%. We'll see what happens this year. But as they're choosing who goes in those seats, they have to answer to a lot of different constituents. So they have to think about the professors who are looking for people who are going to be a great fit with the case method. The case method is an active discussion where the students are, in a way, in partnership with the professors teaching the class and may, speak more than the professor would in any given class. The students are also looking for people that they can learn from. You have a wide representation of industries in the class and different cases that you tackle every day. You want to be hearing from people who are not all experienced only in one perspective or industry. So they want a variety too. The alumni are looking for people who have leadership potential and might help the network. Recruiters are looking for people to fill jobs. And the dean is looking for all of the above and somebody who's going to be a good brand steward, so that when people learn that that person went to HBS, it will seem like a good reflection on the school. Okay, what else do you want to keep in mind? Well, in addition to all of those things, kind of their concerns, what they're dealing with, you have to think about who is in the seat who's reading your application. And what you want to keep in mind is that not everybody who's reading is going to be an expert in your industry or function. So sometimes it might be somebody who only comes in to screen, screen for interviews once a year, read applications for that process. Sometimes it's going to be a full-time admissions officer, but at the end of the day, they may not have worked in your particular industry. So make sure that you don't overuse jargon and explain helpful context. They really want to just kind of get to know you, who you are and where you come from. Remember, they have all this other material on you. The essay is the place to add that kind of get to know you color. And just remember your audience. It's a professional person who's got all of those things in mind that we talked about on the last slide. Okay, so who gets in? This is just a general class profile. I used the class of 2021 here. They just published statistics not that long ago for 22. But it's an abnormal class. It's a little bit different from the normal composition because of coronavirus. HBS offered to as many students who wanted to defer to one of the future classes. So the class is about 200 people smaller. And I just didn't know how the industry breakdown, the industry breakdown may not be reflective of what they normally do. I think it's relatively representative. International might be lower. But this is the typical one. So you're looking at around 43% women, US ethnic minorities of around 27%, international of around 37%. And look at how many undergrad institutions there are, 292. That means not everybody went to Harvard and Yale and Princeton and MIT. There are a lot of schools represented in this class. And they come from all different industries. So you kind of see here all of the different backgrounds that people have, kind of to what we were just talking about of who they want to get in the class. They want some variety. Okay, here are the stats. You can see not everybody has an absolute perfect profile. There's a range of some of these test scores, but at the same time, you know, the average GPA is really high. So academic ability to, you know, handle the discussions, analyze cases, etc., is going to be reflected somewhat in these statistics. They want people who can handle the discussions and be good resources for learning and are serious about their education. So they're going to look to your past performance as a predictor of future results. So a high average GPA of 3.7, that's what they generally get. That doesn't mean you have to have that. It's not a floor, it's an average, but at the same time, that's pretty high. They're also going to look to your test scores. So, oh, and by the way, on GPA, obviously, yes, they're going to take into consideration the difficulty of your program, the difficulty of your major, you know, is it graded on a curve, all of that. So there is going to be some variation, and they are going to be aware of that. But just be aware that they obviously do take it seriously. Gmat scores, you know, as you can see here, there's a really wide range. They have, you know, perfect Gmats, and they have people with a 590. People are surprised sometimes to realize that sometimes people with, you know, 600 scores or whatever can get in. It's rare, okay? It's possible, but it's rare. As you can see, the median, which is sometimes also, they post the mean, it's right around there, 730, that's still pretty high, okay? So GRE is going to be 147, 145 to 170. That is really quite a range as well, but you're going to get, and they're posting the median here. So, you know, could go, obviously this is, gets pretty low here. 163, 163 is what you're looking at. I would say your scores are not going to help you waltz in. You have to kind of be over a minimum hurdle. And the usual profile is somebody who meets or beats these scores, I would say, for the most part, for your best chances. The lower scores are really going to be exceptional cases. So if you're an exceptional case, it's not out of range. But if you're just a great candidate overall, you need your scores to be high. Okay. What else are they looking for? They want somebody who reflects. They want somebody who's thoughtful. The reason for this is because of the case method. In discussions, they don't want just people who are just going to give the answer is 47, but why the answer is 47, how the answer is 47, okay? They want people who are going to have a discussion around the things that you're talking about, who are going to take it to the next level. What else do they want? Simplicity. They don't want people who are going to take, you know, 15 minutes to make a simple comment. They want people who get to the point so that everybody can kind of get a chance to contribute. If there's only a few people speaking each class, it's not as productive, right? So don't overthink it, don't overcraft it, don't overwrite it, just get to the point, be clear, be succinct, and communicate simply. Most business communications, it's relatively straightforward and simple. They're not looking for people to use huge, hard to understand words. What else do they want? They want a demonstration of core values. So they are looking for habit of leadership, analytical aptitude, and engaged community citizenship. They want people who are going to go out there, be movers and shakers, be influential in the world, and contribute to the world, okay? And so I think, you know, as we look at what might they be looking for, really don't be thinking so much about saying what you think they want to hear. Communicate yourself as your best self as clearly and simply as you possibly can. And they look for that diversity of perspective. So again, just be yourself. Okay, so let's get into the actual essay. So let's take a look at what the question tends to be. I haven't updated this, but this is the same application question as last year. As we review your application, what more would you like us to know as we consider your candidacy for the Harvard Business School MBA program. And there is no word limit, unlike a lot of other schools. So I think the first question that many people ask is, how much should I write? I would say that the easy answer, 1,000 to 1,500 words would be a good length. Even shorter is fine. 850, I would say, is good. But I think that the real answer is to take the space you need to tell your story. Okay, what do we mean by that? What more do we need to know is really the key portion of this. With the word more, HBS is acknowledging that it already has a ton of information about you. They've got your resume, they've got your extracurricular activities, they've got your recommendations, they've got your short answer responses, your transcript, your score. Really, they have a lot of information in other parts. So think about, what they already know. What they know about you as a candidate and what they might need to understand to really get to know you as a person, your motivations, and how you did the things you did, okay? They're not asking for fresh, new information. They're asking for more. So what I want you to realize is that it's not just about coming up with something additional that's random about you, but like what is the story that needs to be told? So sometimes people think, well, I can't write about that because it's on my resume. No, it's not saying that you can't touch on anything that shows up anywhere in the rest of your application. It's about priorities and thinking about what they need to know to understand you as a person. So what I would say is, instead of repeating the what from your resume or the what from your other background that you want to tell them more about the how and the why. Okay? What do they need to know to understand what makes you tick? So what should that sound like? Well, it may surprise you, or maybe it doesn't surprise you, that there's no one way to write this essay, okay? They have no preconceived notions of what good looks like, they say. They look forward to variance. They really want to have a collection of different essays. And so it makes it a little bit hard to tell people how to do this, because the answer is, it depends. It depends on you. It depends on your story. It depends on what's being stated throughout the rest of your application. You have to kind of pull back and think about yourself as a candidate for what isn't showing up that they need to know to consider your candidacy. So for you, it's an opportunity to reflect. It's a big experience. It's a lot of money. It's time away. It's exciting. It's an investment in your future. Stopping to reflect is really important before you begin to think about writing your essay. Okay? For them, it's also a chance just to get to know you beyond the elements of the application that feel fixed. There's nothing you can do about your GPA at this point, but the essay kind of gives you breathing room to decide what to accentuate and what you feel is most important for them to consider about you. So it's like a counterweight or a counterbalance to some other things that you can't change. Okay, so look for that new information that lets them know about you as a person. Okay, so how do you do this? Well, the first step is you brainstorm. So our advice is to think about your brainstorming as multidimensional. And so what does this mean? Multidimensional means consider all of the different elements of your life. It's all fair game. You can inventory your various roles at work and in your life. So, here's a person who is a project manager at a consulting firm, but is also going to review and think about all of his other roles in his life. Maybe he does an internal committee at work for the health committee. What are the elements of that he can think of? And maybe outside of work, he's on a community theater board. What are the elements of that he can think of? And, maybe he's got something in his personal life. Really, he's got a standout relationship with his grandparent. Maybe there's something there that he can use. And so for each of these different roles, think about what your activities are, what are the things that you've done? And then beyond that, this getting to the how and the why as opposed to the what. So the what is, this person managed 7 consultants at a failing company, but how and why and what are the elements that went into that? What's the context of that? How did you do that? If it's a failing company, what were the issues you ran into? Are there interpersonal things like the client was really upset? or the people on the team were not motivated? Or did you run into any gray area situations where you didn't want to cross a line? How did you juggle this very difficult assignment? And what did you learn about yourself as a leader? So it's really, yes, on the resume, they've seen that you managed seven consultants at a company that was struggling, but what that was actually like and how your leadership emerged, that's something they don't know. Okay. Think about some other things. So, that's going deep on one particular role. Remember to do this across all of your roles. So go broad as well. For the health committee, what did you do? Maybe other people were like, we don't have time for this. What are you talking about? And you said, no, I really want to do this initiative. I think it's something that will really get people all together and will, kind of bring cohesion in the group and sort of healthy behavior that makes people more energetic and motivated. So what are the things that you did to organize this role? Okay. Think about the theater board. What did you do there? If you're on the board, did it run out of money? Did you have to come up with a creative fundraiser? Did somebody tap you to become president? What did you do in that role? And if you're a standout grandson, what was the epitome of that relationship? Maybe you took her on an unusual trip to Hungary. You did a fundraising effort for some sort of medical charity, and you raised a significant sum. What was that experience like? And think about, kind of like which of these is the best situation for you to kind of get into in your essay. Okay, so these are all the world of possibilities. Doesn't mean you have to do all of them, but you're just kind of brainstorming on what your options are. Okay, yeah, you can't say it all. So you can't pick all of these things. Then you're going to have way more than 1,000 words. You're going to have 6,000 words, and you can't do that. So you got to be thinking, okay, let me be strategic. Which one am I going to do as part of my essay? Okay. Then what you want to do is you want to think strategically about different approaches. So you can think about, well, what would I write about these if I were organizing it as a theme? Thematic essays are very common. Maybe there's sort of a pattern. Maybe you're always somebody who organizes your communities, whether it's with the theater board, whether it's at work with the health committee, maybe it's, you're the kind of like the motivator. And you're the motivator at work with your project. So you had this failing company and you motivated the people working under you and you motivated the company you were working for. So here's an example. If you think about, hey, I'm a morale builder. What are there examples of this that I could talk about throughout that kind of go across all of my experiences? Maybe that emerges as a theme. You don't have to do this, but sometimes when you're taking your inventory and brainstorming, there are clear patterns that emerge. This is a possibility for you. Okay, what are some other approaches you could do? Maybe there's a single individual thing that really represents who you are. There's a micro example as a window into how you approach life. So, think of this as a way for telling a single story that represents your values or your unique experience. Let's say you worked for a period of time in an unusual country where you had something that challenged you and really evolved you as a leader. Maybe that moment, that time frame is what you want to talk about. In the example that we went through before with this person who did this brainstorming inventory, his grandmother, was something he really wants to talk about. She couldn't travel alone. He took her to Hungary for a week. Maybe that person's, all of that person's other accomplishments, resume, test scores, super high. There's nothing to say about this person because he's got very clear, understandable cookie cutter experiences that everybody else could have. So he's thinking strategically about what more they need to know about this person that they wouldn't get from the resume. Maybe they wouldn't know something about his values of really, kind of forming close relationships. And this is going to be a micro example of how he does that in his personal life and, thinking about what that says about this candidate as a person. Okay. And approach 3, discuss a personal journey. So maybe there are some mini stories along the way. I think this is generally a really good approach for people who have pivoted roles, and you need to kind of understand how or why that happened, okay? So, and it shouldn't be like very linear, like every single step of the way, but really kind of like some mini stories, 2 or 3 of them, that kind of reveal the motivations, especially around those transition points, okay? Because if this is the approach that you're taking, we really don't necessarily want a repeat of the resume again, but really the how and why. I think the question around here is why the switches, okay? So personal journey might be an approach if you have that background. Narrative approach is usually great, but don't try too hard, okay? It's really hard to say how to do this, which stories to do. It really depends on the situation, okay? But personal journey is good for any time where there's an evolution or a collection of experiences that only make sense together. Okay. And then how do you write it? Okay, this is the last section that we want to talk about here, which is what do you do when you need to actually put this thing pen to paper? Okay, so I think that the 4 things that you want to keep in mind are the following things. So number 1, this is something I say all the time, show, don't tell. And we're going to go into some examples of that. The next one is keep it simple and keep it honest. We mentioned this before. I think there's a tendency when people see the word Harvard to use really big fancy words or explain things with a lot of business jargon. And really, they just want direct, simple writing. The third thing I would say is reflection. Again, we talked about this with the case method. The professors want people who are not just going to give the answer, but talk about why and how. So what did you learn? Why did you take that path? How did the event shape you? Go deeper. Think about, kind of what that means in the context of the larger whole of your life and your motivations. And then reveal, who are you? What do you stand for? They really want to get to know you as a person. They already have your statistics. Who are you as a voice in the classroom? Okay, so first, show, don't tell. What do we mean when we say this? So I think there's a very common tendency for people to make declarative statements. I am dedicated and compassionate. I am empathetic. What really you need to be doing is showing the evidence of why you say that. Tell the details that are behind those declarations. So here's somebody who's saying, my best qualities are that I'm dedicated and compassionate. I can't help but feel empathetic toward people and animals. I've been volunteering in a no-kill shelter for several years. It warms my heart every time I see a puppy rescued. I'm relentless in finding the owners of strays. But there are no details on there to really help us believe you. So what you want to be doing is really showing the evidence for the claims that you're making. So if you're saying you're dedicated and compassionate, think about ways that you can show that. If you're saying you feel empathetic, what are ways that you can show that? If you're relentless in finding the owners, what are ways that you can show that? So here's a different approach to the same basic information. How many posters must you affix to lampposts to find a stray dog's owner? I've learned in Brooklyn, the answer is usually 2 per block for 50 square blocks. I post on Fridays so people will notice over the weekend. And in the past 2 years, I've easily posted more than 20,000 notices and returned 30 dogs to their teary-eyed, always grateful owners. So think about, wow, that's so much more believable than what you said above. Okay, so think about showing instead of telling. The next thing I'd say to you is to keep it simple. I was brimming with excitement after years of hard, unrelenting work and effort. I was able to achieve the pinnacle of my career, a presentation in front of our CEO, an impressive man with an unrivaled pedigree and someone for whom I held a tremendous amount of esteem. I could barely contain my excitement as I started to present, my palms sweating, my heart racing. And then to my absolute horror, there on page 1, a typo in the CEO's name. It was the most horrifying, embarrassing moment of what had heretofore been a glowing career. So this is very overwrought, very long, very indirect. Really, you could have said that in so many fewer words. So there it was in bold type on slide 1, presentation to CEO Peter Monroe. I had prepared for months, but at the biggest moment of my career, I made a rookie mistake. Our CEO's last name is Monroe. So if they're thinking about who's going to be a fit in the classroom, who's going to contribute to the discussion, in a productive way, one of the things they want to keep in mind is sharing the airtime, which means sharing the time that you have in the class to discuss a case. So if you take too long in your story, they're going to think you may not be productive in the classroom. So you want to balance detailed stories with clear communication. Okay, and then reflection. That's another thing that we've talked about. Think about what things mean. So here's somebody who grew up in a successful family, took nothing for granted. Many judged me as spoiled, but few knew that I was working incredibly hard from an early age. My parents had no toleration for me being idle. My days were filled with chores. I worked odd jobs in high school. Hard work became core to who I am and continues to shape me to this day. So again, you've got to show, not tell. You know, if you worked hard, show us that hard work. What are the examples? What are the details? And then reflect on it and think about, you know, kind of what it meant. Like why did your parents value hard work? Why did you do that as opposed to, you know, just kind of coasting? All right. So understanding the motivations, reflecting on the whys for these different things is important. So it's easy to make assumptions about junior when senior is so successful, but my father used the determination that enabled him to build his firm to ensure that none of his children were spoiled. For me, that didn't mean I was expected to get good grades and compete hard in high school sports. It was something further than that. It meant that I pumped gas for 20 hours a week starting in 9th grade to pay for school trips and to walk around with pocket cash. I learned early that I could take nothing for granted. So here you see the details in the story that make it believable. So it's not just I worked odd jobs in high school. Was that one time? You know, did you earn $5 or was this pumping gas for 20 hours a week? If you think about, you know, the information that they already have on the application, I want you to assume that this is somebody's, this is a famous billionaire's child who writes this. So you would be surprised to learn that, you know, I don't know, Bill Gates's daughter was pumping gas for 20 hours a week, right? That would be surprising new information. And here you're understanding why and how much to pay for school trips. Well, those can add up. So this can't have just been one time. This has to be an ongoing experience. And then kind of the reflection, I learned early that I could take nothing for granted. So that reflection is that little bit on the end that says, you know, what it means, okay, what you learned from it. Yeah, and then the other one was reveal. Just reveal your motivations, reveal who you are, okay, as a person. So remember, you don't really need to write about goals. There is a little goals section in the short answer piece of the application. It's around 500 characters, so not crazy long. Sometimes people tell me, oh, it's 500 words. No, it's not. It's 500 characters. It's much shorter than that. It's a few sentences. But you can write about goals if it's important to understanding who you are. So, and I usually tell my clients, you know, generally where that's coming out, it tends to be towards the end of the essay. But again, if you've already covered it on the goals section, remember, you don't want to be repeating that information. So it's really only if you need to give more color, context, motivation to what you've already said elsewhere. Do you need to write about HBS? You don't really need to write about HBS. They know that you're applying there. Their yield is very high. You don't have to persuade them. No, really, I'm serious about this application. Their assumption is if you're applying, you want to go. So you don't need to wax poetic about HBS. And I would say that the reasoning behind that partially is also because they want to know what they need to know about you, not themselves. So going on about a laundry list of all kinds of courses that you're interested in taking is not answering the question. What more do we need to know as we consider your candidacy for HBS? They don't really need to know about themselves. So again, it gets to the point of answering the question. Go back to that question. Think about, am I answering this question with this piece of the essay? Don't copy and paste Stanford's What Matters Most essay. Yes, I think if they tend to get a 650-word essay that clearly has just been cut and pasted from Stanford's, that's going to make you look like you didn't put any effort into their question, which is different. I think sometimes you can kind of get away with this if it is what they need to know about you, your motivation, what matters to you and why is something that they wouldn't get from the rest of your application. So you could do that, but I would just make sure that you really feel like, that's the kind of thing that you would have written anyway. All right. So sometimes I find that works well. Sometimes I find it doesn't work as well. I've worked with clients where they're very similar essays, and I've worked with clients who have done completely different essays. Just kind of depends. And read it out loud. I think that's a good tip for yourself to realize whether you're being fluent in your descriptions, whether certain paragraphs are going on too long, whether you're tripping over your words. Can you speak more succinctly or clearly? Reading it out loud can often be very helpful. Okay, so last year we released a guide, What Matters and What More, a guide to the Stanford GSB and HBS personal essays. It's on our website. It's free, downloadable, essay examples and commentary. I would say the one caveat is that if you're also using it, the HBS essay is still the same as when we released this last year. But the Stanford one, there's been a little bit of a shaving off of the word count in the newer one. So just be aware of that. It's got some sample essays. We've got a ton of free information also on the mbaMission website under free guides and admissions guides. Okay, so just a couple minutes. I'm going to go over a few things about mbaMission, and then we'll be opening up the floor to Q&A. Okay, so mbaMission, we're the #1 firm by Poets and Quants, highest rated firm on Gmat Club. We're recommended by Manhattan Prep, a test prep company. We used to recommend many firms. Now it's only us. We've got full-time consultants who are not doing this just on the side of their regular jobs. This is really something that we all do all day. And so that gives us a lot of experience. And we collaborate. So we all know each other, work together. Usually we have a conference. It was canceled this year, but we are in constant communication. I've already talked to like 4 people today. And it's, 9:30 in the morning for me in California. So mbaMission, what are other ways to get to know us? We have events. We've got all the guides that I just mentioned on our website, career primers. Feel free to book a consultation with one of us. We have free consultations available for booking on our website. What are our services? Well, the main thing that we do is the start to finish package, where you buy a certain number of schools and we help you with every aspect of that application. We really don't, kind of count the drafts or count your time. It's really as much support as you need in that period of time, all the way through to waitlisting, if that's the situation that you run into. So it really doesn't just end when you submit the application. It's interviews, it's all the other communications that come up after that as well. You can use us for hourly services for just a few hours of help. Also, if you do the application entirely on your own, but then you get an interview, especially for HBS, we have mock interview sessions, and we run these. We also run a special one for the Wharton team-based discussion period. And then if you're a real early bird, pre-application strategy is also something we do. So, many people, lots of different MBAs. We all work on all the schools. I'm an HBS grad myself, but I work on every school with my clients. So really lots of different working styles and different geographies of our teammates, and we'll find you a great match. Okay, and Q&A. So time for some Q&A. I'm going to flip it over to see whether we have any questions. Okay, guys. Any questions? Aha. Okay. Let's see. All right. I guess I'm just going down the comments. So I see a question from Alyssa. Is the essay the most important part to getting accepted? And I would say, no, I don't think there's any one particular thing that counts alone. It's really a holistic point of view. It's many aspects of it. They're not going to only look at your essay and consider that instead of just the test scores or the GPA or your recommendations. It's really all the pieces in conjunction. They all kind of have to be the best that you can make them. So the essay is not the only thing, but it is an important piece of it, but it's one piece. So you kind of have to do a good job on everything that you can possibly control. Okay, so I had a specific question from Tanmay. Let's see. Can we talk about how we overcame professional or academic failures in life so far? Yes, I think if that's an important part in getting to know you, that's maybe you've determined that your resilience is an integral part of who you are. I think that could be very useful. But I would say that it's a generally optimistic tone that you want to be doing. So overcoming generally is a good thing. But then I want you to think of, so what? Like you've overcome failure. What does that mean? What does that mean about you? What does that mean about your future? Add that reflection. Okay. Okay. Anything next? Does ranking of your previous schooling matter? How does HBS look at candidates from non-top tier previous educations? Yeah. So I think you might remember from the earlier slide that I put up that there were 292 different undergraduate institutions that HBS accepted people from for the class of 2021, I believe. So that is a lot of different schools. So, I definitely think they're going to be looking that it's a good school and that you performed well there. But it's not like they're only taking people from 5 schools in the world, right? They're taking people from a wide range of institutions. I would say that the better the reputation of your school, the more that they know it, those things will help you. If you've been to a school that they really don't know as well, that's probably something that's a little bit challenging for them. So I'm just going to assume that if you had a good school that you went to, you really want to be showing the quality of that school. And let's say, remember, there's not just one element that counts. So I think sometimes if maybe you've gone to a school that maybe isn't necessarily super top ranked, if your employer is very prestigious, that can also help you. So I've had candidates who went to kind of like, decent schools, but not like super, super prestigious. And then they were hired into like a well-known employer, and then they climbed the ranks really quickly and had better jobs than, maybe some peers who started at other schools. They are definitely in the mix. So it's really holistic. Okay, hope that's helpful. What's your opinion on entrepreneurship-based profiles? What are the major aspects for an entrepreneur? Yeah, I'd say, I think it can be tough if you're an entrepreneur to kind of break through. It's going to depend on how big your venture is and how successful your venture is and how much that says about, kind of like your success. So I think it's tough if you've just started a small venture and you don't have a lot of clients, or maybe you haven't even launched yet. I find that, those are going to be tough. You're going to need to show that you have really prestigious or well-known backers. That's what I always say, or well-known clients. Like, let's say you just have your own little business and maybe, nobody knows your company and it's small, but maybe you are selling something to NASA and they are giving you orders of, $100,000, $200,000, contracts that start to add up and grow over time. Then that looks like something with traction, and that's a prestigious client. Or maybe you've got a big backer, somebody famous. Maybe, Bill Gates is backing your venture, or, I don't know, some billionaire that they've heard of and that they know. Then that will be something that will help you. Okay, so I would just say credibility is the number one thing that you can bring to your entrepreneurship profile. How successful you are, is it a real thing? Do you have real clients? Do you have real backers? Are these people, you need somebody to vouch for you basically, or some way to prove that your venture is successful. Okay. As HBS and other schools are switching to online classes amid COVID, do we think we can expect the similar ROI from online teaching, or does it make sense to defer admission to next year? So I'm not sure how to answer this, like whether you have already applied or you're applying this year and you're thinking about September. I think that's what you're asking about. I don't have a crystal ball on coronavirus. I really don't. So, in terms of ROI, I think there's no way for me to answer that question. There's a lot, not just with the investment that you're making, but also like what the employment scene is going to be, X plus 2 years from now when you graduate. And one thing that I think is interesting to think about is I have several clients who are at HBS who opted to go this year. And, I think it's actually potentially an advantage for them to be in a smaller class of, 700 people graduating from HBS versus the usual 930. So if the economy is really strong then and people need people, they've got less competition when they graduate. So that could actually be a real plus for them. I think there's many factors other than just sort of like this whole online education piece. But also I think that HBS did run a lot of their sessions for people who were able to in person. So I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but not everybody is remote. Is it a pain? Yes. Is it ideal? No. But you have to be thinking about all the other factors as well. So jury's out, can't predict, but there's a lot of things to think about. Okay, how important is the timing of the stories you use? Could you use a story from 5 years ago if it impacted you significantly? Of course, yeah. Especially if it was really meaningful to you. But, I would say, what you want to be asking yourself in the back of your mind is, so what? Why are you telling them this story? Make sure that they understand why that's an important part of your background. Add that reflection piece. What would be the best major for you if you wanted to do overall business, like finance, entrepreneurship? Would that just be general business? My question for you is, what major? HBS doesn't have majors. So unless you're in sort of like a dual degree program, they do have, dual degree. If you're with Kennedy School or, then I sort of think that's an implied major. But one of the distinctive things about HBS is really it's a very core education. Your first year is what they call the required curriculum, and everybody's in the same classes. So definitely no ability to major. There are no electives that first year. And then your second year, yes, you have some electives, but really it's hard to argue that you can come up with enough classes to really constitute a major. It's 2 terms, and when I was there, it was 5 classes a term. So, out of 10 classes for 1 year, can you construct a major? I suppose you can do variations on finance or variations on entrepreneurship or business, but really it's a general business education degree. Hard to do a major. How do they look at candidates who have switched careers in the past and are looking forward to another career change after the MBA? Not sure what the intent of this question is. Let's see. I think it's totally fine to have switched careers. We talked about using the personal journey approach perhaps as a part of that, because it's sort of like, what more do they need to know? They kind of probably want to know why you switch careers and what makes them think that this new one is successful and where you're going. Hopefully you're not switching again. That makes it, a little bit harder unless it's a very logical progression where we're learning, okay, this makes sense. If it just seems like you're trying a bunch of stuff, that's probably going to be a less successful strategy. But, I think you just need to use your essay to explain your motivations and rationale for why. Looking forward to another career change after MBA. Yeah, that's what I would be worried about. I would be worried that you are not ready. I think HBS wants people who are ready for the experience and have a clear vision of, kind of what they're going to do with this time. and forfeited money that you would be earning and cost of the education. They want to know that you've really figured it out to some extent. Okay, I'm not saying you have to write anything in blood or have an absolute clear picture, but you have to know enough that they think you're going to be successful once you leave. And recruit well if you're going to be using recruiting, or that you have a clear vision of what you're going to be doing on your own if you're going to be doing something on your own. How much do social fellowships add to your resume for HBS? I'm afraid I have no idea what you mean by that. Social fellowships, when I think of fellowship, I think of like a scholarship which is like named or something. So are you talking to me like you have a scholarship that's sponsoring you, like the government is sponsoring you with a fellowship, or you have like a Fulbright, amount of funds? I'm working with people who have had, either been sponsored by their governments or their, something like that for part of their education. That can be a plus, but it's no shoo-in. It's not like, this person's background is completely paid for, therefore that person is automatically getting in. They're going to come, they're going to compose their class. They can take people from all around the world and all different situations. And that variety is going to be more important than whether you can pay for it. So I hope I'm answering that question right. I'm not sure what you mean. Okay, 2 + 2. If the applicant has a 10-month gap between graduation date and application date, is he or she still eligible to apply for the 2 + 2 MBA? Like you graduated in 10 months. I don't know about 10 months. I would say call HBS. Yeah, I know that they have like a guideline on the amount of time. My question to myself is, I don't know if that's been adjusted for COVID, because people are taking gap years and things like that. So, or graduating at a funny time. So my guess is there may be exceptions to whatever rule they've had in the past, or they've changed that, or I really don't know. I don't want to speculate and give you the wrong answer. So call them. Government sponsored, somebody was asking. Is that the social fellowship thing? It's a government sponsored thing. Yeah, like Kuwait or something. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing, but it's, that's not going to, it's going to be one tiny piece of the application. They're less worried about you having the ability to pay for it than what you're going to contribute in the classroom. So it can be great. And I've seen it work out for people, but it's not the only factor. It's just like it's like a plus. Okay. Any final advice to round 1 candidates currently in the interview process? Woohoo! Awesome. Congratulations. Okay. For those people, yeah, I would say, I don't know that there are interviews actually still going on too much. I think most people are pretty much done. Yeah, I would say what I always tell people who are in the HBS interview process is, and then I'll talk about general schools, okay? But just for HBS, I would say that the number one thing I tell people to do is to be engaged, be like ready to play. Think of it as a case discussion where the case is you. So really be willing to dive in and think about it and show that reflection and motivation and all of those good things that they look for in the students who are in the classroom. So think of it as a proxy for the case discussion. Okay, and then other things on round 1 interview processes for other schools. Yes, I would say, first of all, know the format of the interview. There are different schools do different interview situations. So if it's a top MBA program in the US, there's a good chance we have interview guides on our website at mbaMission. And so I would check there to see, hey, let me get an understanding of what this interview is like. I would say that a lot of them are going to be resume based, and they might be done in a very standard format, kind of like either always by second-year students or always by alums or whatever. So yeah, I would say that adjusting to the style of the school is important, knowing what you're in for. I would say knowing your resume is probably the best thing you can do. Really go back, dust off the cobwebs, think about the experiences that are on there, and be willing to share stories for different situations. A lot of schools use something called behavioral interview questions, which are tell me about a time when, tell me about a time when you worked with a difficult team member. Tell me about a time when you went outside the bounds of your authority. Tell me about a time when you led a team. These are all things, stories that your resume might be a really good sort of like foundational starting point for answering those questions. And so kind of like go in like we did with the brainstorming part in the first part of this presentation, where we were like, okay, what was that actually like? I led this project, but what were the difficulties? Who was blocking me? Who was supporting me? How did I convince people to do things? What did I learn? Like those are the elements, like really diving in and reminding yourself of your resume in preparation for your interview is important. And then I think the two things I always tell people to try to demonstrate in interviews are connection and fit. So connection meaning you are listening to the interviewer and really answering the questions that person's asking and being, kind of like easy to get along with, that you're not so freaked out about the interview and worried about your perfect answers that you forget to listen and engage with your interviewer. So connection is important. And then fit, really knowing your school and showing why you're a great fit for that program. Really important. Okay, let's see. So, thank you for posting the interview guides and the other stuff. We have like a few minutes left, so I can take questions on other schools. I see someone from Bill. Thoughts on why I want to go to B school essays. Current at point A, trying to get to point B. Here's why I think business school might get there. Yeah, that's the basic format. I think you got to lead, think about your goals. Your goals are going to be an important part. And so what I would say is don't just declare your goals, but give them a window as to why. Why is that your goal? What is the unknown story back there? I think sometimes it can come by sharing things about your personal life and background that, cause you to have those goals, or an experience that you had that led you to have that goal. Sometimes it's an aha moment. Sometimes it's a collection of experiences, and you might add some reflection on there as to why that's your goal. And then, that's going to be the thing that's helpful, as opposed to just like declaring your goals and listing a bunch of random classes. That kind of isn't persuasive. So understanding the whys is really important for those essays. And then also like sounding knowledgeable. Like, is this goal realistic? Is it achievable? What are the steps I need to take? Am I throwing out a couple of possibilities and I haven't really done any research? The more that you sound like you know what you're talking about, you're really thoughtful about why that school or those classes, instead of just being like, and I'm going to take strategy and finance, well, I'm going to take strategy so that I can determine whether which move is the right move, whether to buy or to build capabilities for our business. I'm going to take strategy because I know that it's a highly competitive market with many new entrants, and I want to figure out how I'm going to position my company to survive when it gets challenged. Like adding the thought behind it as to why those things are important for your situation, I think is helpful. How old is too old for the HBS Mba? Ooh, for whom? Here's what I think. I think, there's definitely a range. The sweet spot is probably anywhere from 4 to 8 years. And once you start getting to the 10, 11, 12-year category, there are candidates who are in their early 30s, maybe even as high as mid 30s. I think once you get into the 30s, though, the numbers dwindle as to how many people are there. I think then that people start thinking about doing executive MBA programs or part-time MBA programs, because they tend to, think about what would be valuable to you for a peer group. So they exist. You can apply. They will read every application. Could they conceivably admit somebody in their 40s? Sure. Do they do it all the time? No. So yeah, I think that's from their side. From your side, I think what you want to be thinking of is like, what at a certain point, like what's going to be valuable for you in terms of taking time away from your career. There's no express HBS MBA. There's no executive MBA. They have these other programs that they run that are executive education, but it's not an MBA. I think those are the one like Tyra Banks, Curly Kloss did. Celebs do it sometimes, but yeah, those are shorter programs. It's not the same thing. So what's going to be worth you taking that kind of 2 years away? And also, what are you going to do with that summer internship? I think would be a good question. Sometimes if you're too far advanced, there just aren't really situations set up for you. Now, if you can convince them that your employer wants you to do this experience and they're going to carve out a role for you, or you're an entrepreneur and you know exactly what you're going to do with that time, or you're going to work for some sort of like special situation, that's a question that might be in the back of their minds. If you can overcome that objection, they'll take you seriously and they'll consider it for sure. I'm defending my thesis in the first semester of 2021. I want to move to consulting in the US. I'm 30 and wish to enroll in a top B school. Do you think an MBA can be valuable for consulting? Yeah, I think MBAs are useful for consulting. I don't really know. It sort of sounds like you might not have work experience. I'm not sure. Most US business schools really want some work experience. So hopefully you've had some work experience alongside your education. If it's just research for like a PhD or something like that, I find that those candidates have a little bit of a tough time sometimes competing in the really top MBA programs in the US because it's just sort of the work experience is such a big component, especially at a school like HBS with the case method. They need to tap into everybody in the classroom's work experience for it to be a successful discussion. So, yeah, I think, you have to be thoughtful about the program, which program. I would say, yeah, try to figure out whether other people have done that path. I don't know enough about your background to be able to answer. I'm sorry. But maybe the European programs are more open-minded about that. I'm not sure. I have less than 2 years of work experience as a process engineer. Okay. Oh, does a PhD count as working experience? Gotcha. Oh, this is all from that last question. Okay. 2 years work experience as a process engineer before, but then you've been maybe doing aerospace PhD. And understanding why you want to do consulting. I mean, I do think that consulting, it depends. I think what you want to do is tap into consultants in your network and try to figure out, how they treat PhD candidates. I would be looking for people who have done your path before you and network and figure out, because different consulting firms have different programs. Like if are you looking to be like an aerospace consultant? There may be people who specialize, firms that specialize in that. McKinsey has like so many specialties. I would look to your network and ask the consulting firms how they view MBAs for somebody with your path or how that works. That's my advice. Okay, I think we're almost at time. Anybody have the last question? What happens after you are done with the interview? Your whole application is reevaluated or the final decision is made primarily considering your performance in the interview. Yes. So, yeah, they go back to the table. So I would say, after the interview, it just becomes one piece of data in the whole application file. So for HBS in particular is a very important piece at HBS because it shows your fit with the case method and your fit with the program. So that's a big factor for them. Is it possible to have an imperfect interview and still get into HBS? Yes. Is it possible to have a total disaster of an interview and get into HBS? That might be tougher. I would say that's probably unlikely. But if you've done basically okay, does it mean you're absolutely in? No, it's not like Survivor where like everybody, you're once you pass that interview, then you're automatically in. I would say they're going to go back and then they're going to look at that class and they're going to be like, okay, who are the people who did decently well and what are the different perspectives that we want to assemble in this classroom? And they're going to take it from there. So I think what happens with the interview is maybe like elimination of certain people who did very, very badly. But other than that, you're going to still be in the mix for the most part. And then you could still have done very well in your interview, but they just don't have room for you and they're going to have to make a tough decision. So unfortunately, you know, if you feel like your interview did go well, I would say that's great. That's really important. Fantastic. But, you know, it's possible that you still might not get in because they can't fit as many people from your background as they want to, because they want to have this mosaic of perspectives in the classroom. So it's not guaranteed. It's one piece of data. The good news is if you have like kind of an okay interview, they may still want you for other reasons of the voice that you're bringing, your unique experiences. So it may not be over for you. So that's the flip side of that. So it's just one piece of data and a sea of data. Okay, great. Well, that's the hour. So hope we got everything answered. Go to our website and get lots of more information. And if you want a consultation or to talk about anything, feel free to book. Bye.